the operation will not be unlawful. In the United States, a number of court decisions have stated that the danger to life need not be imminent in order for an abortion to be justified, and a number of other cases have upheld the right of a doctor to perform abortions. And almost no jurisdiction in America requires the registration of a fetal death before 5 months, which seems to show that a fetus is indeed not recognized as a human by the law. But as most state laws on abortion now stand, it is illegal to prescribe, supply, administer, or advise any woman, pregnant or not, with any substance, medicine, drug, or information which could lead to abortion. In addition, any woman who deliberately causes her own miscarriage is equally guilty of abortion. American Civil Liberties Union attorney Harriet Pilpel, who serves as legal counsel to the Association for the Study of Abortion in New York, explains why current abortion laws are unconstitutional.
They prevent physicians from practicing their profession as they should, and it may even, in a sense, force them to commit malpractice. I think that in and of itself is an unconstitutional thing for a statute to do. The laws also interfere with the right of privacy, where the implication is very strong that it's up to a married couple to decide whether they want to have children. The state has no right to say to them, you must have this child simply because your contraceptive hasn't worked, for example. A third reason we have in our Constitution, as you know, a guarantee of equal protection of the laws. These laws do not act with equal force on the rich and the poor. They do not act with equal force on the Negro and the white, on the white and the Puerto Rican. I also think the statutes are unconstitutional because we have a general test that a statute must bear some reasonable relation to a proper legislative purpose. I don't know what the proper legislative purpose is in forcing the birth of fatally defective offspring or children who are not wanted to people who don't want them. With reference to those aspects of the abortion law which say that you may not talk about, refer to abortionists without somehow being an aider or abettor to the crime, I think a very strong argument can be made that that violates the First Amendment, the freedom of speech.
In addition, present abortion laws violate the First and 14th Amendments of the Constitution in that they establish a religion by enforcing a religious morality. The main proposal for reform comes from the American Law Institute. In 1962, after 10 years of study and discussion by judges, professors, lawyers, and other legal experts, the Institute issued its Model Penal Code to serve as a guideline for future legislation in all areas of penal law. Regarding abortion, the code proposed that abortion be considered legal where the pregnancy would impair the physical or mental health of the woman, where the child might be born with a grave physical or mental defect, or when the pregnancy resulted from rape, incest, or in a girl under the age of 16 who was not married. So far, only 2 states, North Carolina and Colorado, have passed laws based on this code, but similar bills are being considered in many other state legislatures. Mrs. X, the mother of 2 children who has had several abortions, gives her view of Catholic doctrine.
The basic premise of their position is simply not the basic premise of the position that most of the United States of America holds. There are great numbers of Catholic women having abortions, and the statistics in Catholic countries is worse than it is in the United States. There are 20,000 French women a year who die having illegal abortions, which is a fantastic number, simply fantastic. Now, this is a Catholic country, and I don't understand how the Church can ignore the proof of the pudding in the countries which they theoretically do control the souls of the citizens.
Statistics would seem to back her up. A survey of Catholic opinion in a March 1967 issue of Newsweek indicates that well over 40% of American Catholics do not support the Church's stand on abortion. A number of studies show that Catholics, who make up 25% of the American population, account for about 22% of all abortions, a percentage almost equal to their population ratio. And in France, a Catholic country, the annual number of abortions equals the annual number of live births, according to Dr. Mary Calderon. Episcopal Reverend Malcolm Boyd offers some insight on the Catholic position.
You mean the Church's official position? Because this is true of all denominations now. You can go to any hierarchical figure. Increasingly, what they may say on a number of subjects will be quite different in practice from what the rank and file believe and probably are practicing. I was going to say a hierarchical position on birth control would not be revealing of the fact that as many Catholic as Protestant women are using methods of birth control. And I think it's important to say this because, I think the day of the hierarchical statement may be over, really, unless there's some reality in it. Because I think if it's just reflecting an official point of view, but if it is not supported in practice by a great many people, then it's, what is it? It's a view held by a few people, but it shouldn't pose any longer, should it, as more than that?
Dr. Rifkin gives his feelings on the women who have abortions.
My feeling would be that they certainly, in most instances, are not acting in their own best interests. Studies are beginning to appear which show that the act of abortion carries with it a psychological and perhaps psychiatric impact on the woman. Certainly, insofar as it is not accepted as a group ethic that the woman can be aborted for socioeconomic reasons, I would suggest that in many cases it does carry a heavy burden of guilt with it.
But Mrs. X makes another point.
The psychiatric problems involved in getting an abortion are nowhere near to be compared to the psychiatric problems involved in having a baby that you have to give away or that you have to raise as an illegitimate child.
And a study by Dr. Hans Binder of Switzerland showed that 33% of girls forced to bear children against their wills were psychologically disturbed, some seriously, by the experience. Reverend Malcolm Boyd sums up the faults of abortion laws.
I think anything which forces us into bootlegging, which forces us underground, is quite dangerous. And what it seems so terrible here is, in the name of preserving human life, there is the destruction of human life. Because there seems to be there's a kind of legalistic position about the preservation of the life of the child, and yet, the wife and mother has a relationship with her husband, which I think cannot be despised, with other children. I think anything that sets up a double standard, anything that forces people to get into situations where they're going to have to pay under the counter, or there's this terrible physical danger involved, there's the psychological danger, there's the awful scar that could be there of having had to do something in this sacrosanct, hidden way. I just think it's a terrible blight on the society. It seems a pity that we can't yet seemingly get it out into the open and deal with it. I think that's most unfortunate.
Monsignor McManus reminds us of something else.
I hope it doesn't sound too simplistic, but each one of us at one time was a fetus. And we're here today because of the love and the care of our mothers and our fathers. You and I at one time were as small and as insignificant, yet with this tremendous potential to be a human being, which every fetus has.
Writer Lawrence Lader gives his final opinion.
The medical profession alone should make all the decisions on abortion, and nobody else has a right to get into this decision. It's extremely essential that medical groups stand up, state their mind, say exactly what they feel, and that they continue not just to do the abortions that they're doing now, but continue to enlarge the scope of abortion, because only they, when it comes down to it, can really decide when an abortion is going to be done and which one is going to be done.
And John Lasso of the Episcopal Diocese gives what is probably the best solution.
I think that in the interest of logic and consistency, I would have to say that there should be no laws on the books governing abortion. Abortion is a social problem, and if we want the doctors to make the decision in certain cases that essentially it is a medical decision to be made, well, first of all, of course, by the mother, and then secondly by the doctor attending her.
What conclusions can be drawn? Reform will do little good, since the law still will not cover the majority of women presently having abortions. The contention that abortion on demand will lead to promiscuity is a false one, since more than 80% of all abortions are performed on married women who already have children. The unmarried, pregnant teenage girl makes up only a minute percentage of abortion cases. The fact remains that present abortion laws are based on nothing more than a religious minority opinion.